Kurt Tofflin, Shakespeare Behind Bars. This is our second NEA grant for juvenile justice. We just finished it for this year on Sunday. I'm going to kick it to Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy Dickinson, Senior Program Director at Arts Midwest on behalf of Shakespeare and American Communities and Juvenile Justice Work. So I'm so happy to see so many of you here. So thank you for joining us. I'll hand it to Michael Barr.
Cool. I'm Michael Barr. I'm the Education Director for the Utah Shakespeare Festival. Thrilled to be in company with people who I consider really, really great leaders in this field. We've had a challenge actually through COVID getting in this year, but good news. I just shared this with Christy about 2 weeks ago. We have received the okay to now go into the facilities, and so we're planning on in about 2 weeks starting back into the facility, which is not the position we were in the past year. So we're grateful that things are opening up again. So cool. And I will throw it to Grant Mudge.
Thank you, Michael Barr. It's good to see you, and so very, very many friendly faces on here. This is terrific. This is terrific. Grant Mudge. I'm with Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival, which is part of Shakespeare at Notre Dame. Another cohort down there on my screen, 3 down. And the reason that we have a program at DePaul Academy, which is housed within the Thomas N. Frederick Juvenile Justice Center for St. Joseph County, is because of Scott Jackson and because I sat in circle, of course, with Kurt Tofflin, and I'm hugely grateful to those guys. We have been in quite a bit, and then back out, and so we're in now. And I may let Scott talk about that a little bit because he's of course also teaching in that program. But it's our first year with Shakespeare and American Communities and Juvenile Justice, and our second year of the program overall. And the kids are great. I love them.
Scott Jackson, I'm the Mary Irene Ryan Executive Director of Shakespeare at Notre Dame, and one of the co-founders of the Shakespeare in Prisons Network with Kurt. So yeah, I'm actually actively teaching at DePaul Academy right now. We started this semester right after Christmas when there was the huge COVID spike. So we pulled back from in-person, which was the plan, and went to virtual, to Zoom for the first, I think, 6 weeks of a 12-week session. And I'm happy to say it didn't go as well as I had liked, but I had my first in-person class at DePaul yesterday and was just kind of inundated with new information. It's quite a departure from teaching on Zoom, but the next 6 weeks look like clear sailing ahead. So we're excited to finish this 12-week session and then move on to the next 12-week session, which will be April to June, I think. I will kick it to Keith.
Hi, everybody. Keith Mcgill, Louisville, Kentucky. I teach with Matt in the adult program at prison here, Shakespeare Behind Bars. And I also teach kind of with Matt, under Matt's auspices, I guess, with the Kentucky Shakespeare Festival with juveniles. And we haven't been able to get back into the prisons for over a year, but I am doing an in-person group with the juveniles because it's a small enough group and they're COVID safe. And so it's possible for me to be able to do that, which is really terrific. I'll just send it to Matt.
Matt Wallace, Producing Artistic Director at Kentucky Shakespeare and 13th year of Director of Shakespeare Behind Bars at Luther Luckett Correctional Complex. It's been since the first week in March that Keith and I were out there. But yeah, this has really been a bright spot for this juvenile program. We had been doing it in Kentucky, and we were all set last year to have a massive partnership with Louisville Metro Juvenile Detention Center, and then the city decided to close it and ship kids throughout the state. So lo and behold, there's the Clark Regional Detention Center right across the river in Indiana. One of the best contacts. We know how important that is. She has been amazing giving us that access. So for this entire school year almost, we've been out there. So that's been a bright spot this year. All right, Michael.
Hi, everybody. Mike Walker, Actors Shakespeare Project in Boston. We are well into our mostly year-long NEA-funded residency and 2 girls programs in the same facility. And we are also conducting a third residency at a boys short-term treatment program here in Massachusetts. And everything's virtual, has been since all this hit the fan. And about a month ago, Mass DYS announced that all the arts residencies, of which there are not many, as I understand, are being conducted virtually through the end of the school year. So we won't get back in front of our youth face to face until at least the summer, probably, I'm guessing, until the next school year. But we've been charging ahead. We did a couple of virtual residencies as early as May and June last year. Following that, we started our NEA residency in the fall, and then this third one has been going since January, and we'll conclude that one in 4 weeks, I think. So that's what's happening with us. Who has not gone? I'll pass to Leslie.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Leslie Currier from Marin Shakespeare Company, and we are also grateful to be in our second year of programming through the NEA. We have a program at Alameda Juvenile Hall, which started in person. And after the pandemic hit, it took us a while, but we were able to get set up to teach remotely. And I'm here with Damian Brown, who is Marin Shakespeare Company's artist in residence and one of our teaching artists at Alameda Juvenile Hall. So I'm going to kick it to Damian and let him talk about our program a little bit.
First time I've ever coughed that mute button before I started talking. Good morning, everybody. The class that we run at Department of Juvenile Justice and Alameda Juvenile Hall, expressly the juvenile, it has really been beneficial for them. And I've been surprised at how many young people have already had a brush with Shakespeare and acting. And it really gives a lot when they can hear something like Polonius' speech and hear that advice to Laertes and be able to imagine who in your life has shared that with you. I always utilize that we take that Shakespeare. There's so many rich lessons in Shakespeare that anybody could learn from, anyone. So it's a great opportunity to get those hours of a simulated experience through dissecting a story, getting them to look at something perhaps for the first time, long enough time to increase that line between impulse and action when they meet a situation. I'm seeing real benefits from that type of thing. And when we can have the dominant personalities in the group take the lead, it always produces a smoother path to get through the process with the other kids. Because when you do have that validation from those personalities that are more dominant, you get a lot more buy-in. And I really want to share with you something that happened the first time that we went in. I think it's really what nailed me to it, to think that could really be a benefit. Now we're talking about very, very young people. And we had a gentleman who was 14 years old. He was very quiet. He wouldn't say anything. He was being pressed a lot. So when we started to talk to him to really see what his interests were, the young man had been an actor before and had several monologues, but he didn't feel comfortable sharing it around people who were hecklers. So we created a game and allowed them, if he was not good enough in their mind, you can utilize these insults. And this was Leslie's idea, which is great. Not the insults that you know, that you're accustomed to using, but utilize Shakespeare's insults. Now, of course, they get all that energy out. And once you get all that energy out, now they're settled, they're closer to you and they're listening. And you can really give them things. And when that young man started to deliver that monologue, I mean, it was seasoning in that. And the rest of the young people saw that and they wanted to outdo him. Mm. And that thing right there, I feel the benefit that we do in this, if we can give that to the right one, the young people. Because it's not for me. I've earned the right to come in and be trusted and speak and share. The leader has to come up from amongst them. And so we're always looking for that. And I think bringing them the way that we've been able to bring them closer to the works of Shakespeare and not alienate it, to see that it belongs to them just as much as August Wilson or anyone else. And they can only get that when they understand it. So I allow some things that are not readily accepted by all teaching artists. I will allow my young people to burn that energy, and they'll slide those words out. I hear the curse words. I hear the negative connotations that they use, but I don't stop there to address it, because I found that you lose them there. I found that you make room for yes and. Now that I know you know how to talk to this officer on the street level, now let's switch it up and act. If you were a person who abhorred street behavior, how might you approach it then? So, and we bring them closer to situations that they can see in a story, that they can mimic in their life, that they can learn and grow from. And it's really been going well. And we are, as Leslie said, we are not physically in their presence right now, but we've always been virtually connected to them. And there's a lot of trust. And we also have made ourselves available to them upon release through their guardians, of course. And for those who have expressed any type of interest to go into any field, because we bring everything that we have to help them. I mean, my Rotary Club, you know, the connections that I have in that can be utilized to move them to a particular status, it's theirs. I come to them with my whole self, and they know the difference, believe me. So yeah, it's been going well.
Hi guys and gals. I'm Stephanie Shine from Tennessee Shakespeare Company, and we are in our second year of funding with the NEA, and we are grateful for that. And it's our 6th year of working with juveniles. And I'm interested in hearing about your populations, what populations you work for. And I also wanted to thank you, Damien, for speaking. That filled my heart with needed joy today, and I appreciated that. We have been able to work virtually since almost right at the top of it. I'll let my colleague Michael tell you more about that, because he is in the virtual classroom with them. And I just wrote to our administrator and said, okay, we're all vaccinated. Any chance we can get in there yet? And I'm waiting to hear, to see if we can work with them in person. We take a year to explore the journey of through one play, and we're working in Hamlet right now. And last year we did Henry V. Michael, why don't you pop in here and complete this before we...
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Conlarian, acting coach, facilitator for Tennessee Shakespeare Company. We work at Hope Academy currently, which is a school inside the juvenile courts in Memphis, Tennessee. On average, we have about 8 gentlemen every class, and their ARH being they're waiting on either to be dispositioned or charged or released, and they're there for an average of 21 days. So we do a 3-week program with them based on Hamlet. Damien, thank you. That's exactly, I love what you said. That's beautiful. I love to give them this work and then allow them to take it wherever they want. That it's their work to be done, and I'm there to coach, to create an environment. Using Kurt's values, we start off with an agreement system, because it's so easy to go, well, this is common sense, but common sense is not so common. that not everybody knows exactly how to be. So we start there. We start with, Kurt's work. What are the values? What are the values that are important to you? And then explain them. I had a kid that said, I don't respect. And then I said, well, what does respect mean to you? Like, why is it that you can't respect? So explain to me your definition of respect. And he told me, like, well, okay, but let's find some common ground. So it always starts there. And then once we have a common ground, we just hit the ball rolling. We're in Hamlet right now. And they get stuff out of there that, I'm going to use in my personal acting styles. I'm going to steal all of their stuff and use it for me. It's wonderful. And I'm thankful to be doing the work. Who hasn't gone yet?
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see your faces. I'm Mara Sidmore, She Series, based in Boston, working with Mike Walker at Actor Shakespeare Project, the interim managing director and director of education. And Mike has given you some specifics on what we're up to right now with the Department of Youth Services. Just in general, we've been working with DYS for many years and are experiencing right now across the state a lot of changes, similar to what someone else said, closures of facilities. And given COVID, there's been quite a focus on reducing numbers of incarcerated youth, which is a good thing on the one hand, yeah. And also makes it challenging as we negotiate the logistics of changes on a regular basis, both when we're in person and then also virtual, of course. I'll let Mike talk to the specific challenges of virtual, which are mostly technologically related. And it's been interesting. So we look forward to getting back in person as soon as possible, hopefully in the fall.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Ann Daniels. I am currently physically in the home of the Kumeyaay, but I work in the land of the Lenape at the Public Theater in New York. I run the mobile unit. I've been there almost not quite 2 years. Prior to joining the mobile unit, I was here in San Diego at the Old Globe Theater, where I helped start Reflecting Shakespeare, which has now been running for several years and helped to grow that. And now that I'm at the mobile unit, I brought that experience and with me, and that love actually with me of this kind of work, and have been developing in the midst of COVID a program called Hip Hop versus Shakespeare, which we were about to pilot right when almost a year ago now, the day everything shut down, we were set to walk into a federal prison for the first time. And it's really one of the first big expansions of what mobile unit is. So in the last year, we've pivoted and turned our original program into a video course that is launching at the federal facility in Brooklyn. And also we were able in this time, luckily, to make a partnership with the Department of Corrections, which includes the facilities on Rikers Island, and are able to get our video series into their whole tablet system. And so now the whole population has access. About 5,000 folks are able to access this program. Of course, as you all know, this doesn't work as well when there's no one there, right? So there's lots of fun challenges on the day-to-day as we learn and figure out how to do this work in a pandemic, in a theater that has never done this kind of work before. And at the same time, there's a lot of amazing opportunity because of the theater that I'm at. And I think, there's a way for us to continue to leverage those resources, in particular, as it pertains to the juvenile programs. And so we've actually begun a conversation. So my interest, and part of it, Kurt and I have talked a lot about this, is because I could see things grow quickly if I could get all the right pieces to play, and if I can be in the right community. And that's a big piece of what has been driving us this go around with the conference. I sit on the planning team for the Shakespeare in Prisons Conference, and helped co-host it back in 2018 at the Globe. And this community has the potential to really not just serve the people and work with the people in the corrections world, but also we can serve each other in this moment. And so this panel to me is about how do we become a resource to each other. Whether we're able to do the work right now or not, it's actually really not important to me. It's just really important that we're able to lift each other up, share the tools, share the stories that also help sustain us during this time. But I think, in the conversation we had with Christy this week, also, how do we galvanize this amazing group of learning and evaluate and figure out how we come out of this pandemic better, stronger, ready, all of the things, so that we can just really get back in there at a whole different level than maybe what we left. So I'm just super happy you all are here, and just grateful to hear so much about the work you do, the stories that you all have, and then of course the skills that we all can share with each other. So I'm gonna, I think, hand it over to Christy next.
So I'll just share, I want to thank many of you that were kind of involved in conversations with the National Endowment for the Arts Research Department and their researcher as we were looking at a theory of change and evaluation plan and kind of where the NEA wanted to go with that. I just got the recent news on that to share with you is what really came out of that research. The NEA initially had some money set aside to do an evaluation of the juvenile justice component of Shakespeare and American Communities. And so they hired the researcher to look at the theory of change, look at what was kind of the outcomes and the goals, and could there be an evaluation plan built from that. What came out of that research is that it was recommended to the National Endowment by the research associates to think about maybe there was more capacity building that needed to happen in regards to measurements and metrics and evaluation tools in order for us to do a full evaluation of the work. What also came out of that research was just there's not a lot out there in general for anything in regards to evaluating work within the juvenile justice system. Therefore, right now, the National Endowment for the Arts is got a contract out for a potential contractor to come on board and work with all of us, including the research department, as we build capacity building tools to help everyone create these kinds of measurements. And the interesting thing about this is with the NEA, they've got some dollars, quite a few dollars to kind of work on this. And with the idea that if we get the field of this work really building working off of similar tools, that we'll be able to put together an evaluation of this work in the future and be able to really tell that story and be able to share it out and find more resources. This is a huge interest of the National Endowment for the Arts. I envision that this will continue. So we'll be working with Patricia in the research department at the NEA to kind of build these tools, bring you together, hear your voices, your experiences to help us figure out what are those things. We will then have those available right now because of the way the timing works. We will have to go through IRB process. We will have to go through clearance with OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, in order to do this work on a federal level. And so we'll be working together to kind of build that. I really encouraged this direction a little bit from the beginning. And I kind of was like, I don't think we're at a place to evaluate all of these on an equal level. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity for the field as a whole. I'm hoping maybe this is something, and I need to speak with the NEA on this, is this something we can start really developing as a tool that can be used across anyone working in the juvenile justice system and the arts, so that we could really start kind of building that story and building kind of that thing. I know many of you are already doing some of this work and finding ways to do that, but if we were all kind of speaking a similar language, what could that look like in the end? Obviously, this is tools that we hope to develop and have available for grantees in the future. With the timing of how things get approved and on the federal level, this probably won't be fully engaged until 22-23, which I can let you know, we do have dollars to continue the work. We're waiting for full approval, but we're kind of there. So just to kind of share that update with you, I hope, I would like to kind of hear from you, just the initial reaction, feedback, thoughts about that as we kind of build this work going forward.
Great, thank you, Christy, very much. I put in the chat who is missing from today and who plans on being on the March 19th panel. So the idea behind this is to gather and certainly for Christy to update us about what's happening behind the scenes, which is really important for this evaluation to develop a tool. And I'm so appreciative to Christy for her understanding of the programming. She really digs into stuff and gets it and asks good questions. And then she's our representative to the national. And I don't think we could have a better supporter than Christy. This is so we can answer Christy's question that she just asked. If you would like to give some input, you can think about it. You can obviously connect with her outside of this panel. The reason that we're recording the panel is to be able to share with those that weren't here. But even bigger than that is, I'm sure all of you get emails and questions from people that are out there that want to do this work and want to know where to go to do this work and what they need to do this work. And those then that I get emails, and I'm sure all of you do, from people who are doing the work, but were ill prepared to do the work and now are lost on the sea of misunderstanding. And so I think it's, you know, juveniles are absolutely their own entity, so different from adults, so very, very different from adults. And then the facilities that they're housed in, again, so different from adults' facilities, again, granted, needed, far more cautious, all of those kinds of things. That are about protecting the juveniles. So when people go in and try to approach the work from the adult side, they fail miserably because it just doesn't work that way. You can't have any expectation that it's going to work that way. So part of this is for us amongst ourselves who are doing the work to be able to share best practices, to be able to talk to each other about, you know, the biggest thing that hit us this year is COVID and going virtual. Now, does it make any sense to anyone? The most difficult population on the face of the earth are middle school students, right? So I got all my training to do the work in incarceration. That's where I send people when they say, where should I go train? I say, go teach Shakespeare to public school, middle school students. You'll get all that you need to know. So add to that, then take those teenagers and put them in corrections. And you know, it just irises up, the funnel closes even tighter. Then take them and try to deal with them virtually. You know, we've learned so much, as I'm sure all of you have, because we can't use our emotional intelligence in that situation. We can't use the energy, feeling the energy in the room. We can't use the visuals to be able to take in everyone and about what's happening in the room. You know, interrupted, people coming in the room and in and out, and then the energy goes away. And my lead facilitator is Devon Glover. Some of you know him. He's the sonnet man, brilliant teacher. Never had worked with incarcerated population before, right? And just had to adapt so beautifully and had done very little virtual, but you know, we learn as we go. That's the one thing about all of us in this group, is that we're curious, and curiosity is what leads to creativity, and creativity just will not be stymied. Creativity will come out. We have to find where that thread is and how to use that thread. So that's also about what is work. So why don't we kick it off with answering specifically Christy's request? And does anyone have anything they'd like to share?
I can give it a stab. We have measurement tools, but they need to be updated. And I think that there's something about creating them in tandem. There was a move a number of years ago by the Department of Youth Services in Massachusetts in the arts office to do a whole sort of similar to what you're describing, Christy, for the state.
Yeah.
And then that person who was leading that charge left, and I think other priorities shifted. So it never took off, but that was something that we were already starting to think about with the state, is how can we evaluate not just our program, but all arts programs across the state. I would say the implementation of those evaluation tools is really challenging for obvious reasons, but I think
that's been part of our discussion, is how hard those tools can be implemented depending on the situation that you're in, right? Or the type of facility you're working with, or, you know, like, and I think with Massachusetts, that department is, you know, you've been doing that work for a long time, and they're very strong department, but that's not the case in all areas of the country.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I would say that for, you know, depending on where you are in facilities, right? Because we are often in actual English language arts classes. So then they're looking at the evaluation of skills that are specific to the state standards that are perhaps different than what we're looking at from an artistic perspective. So I'm not sure how to help those things link up. So that's one thing.
And I'm actually speaking to those that have more experience in the system than we do. I know within the facilities that we're working, the group, the social workers really love our coming in, and it feeds into what happens with them in group. Are there any capacity building tools in that population? Marks for progress, measured, you know, people finding other ways to express themselves in group and talking in group based on exercises that we have done, which is why I was really excited a year ago when we first met. I remember that first meeting because I was looking fairly hopeful before, you know, COVID came in. Because Kurt's absolutely right. The take a middle school student, throw them into corrections, and then throw them in. It's on its side. But I know from the middle school, there are measurable behavioral things that I think could cross over from collaborations with that. But I also know that every facility is not the same. That school does not talk, in their school classes does not necessarily talk to their group, does not necessarily talk to the administrators with that. So I just throw that out to those of you with more experience, but I know within our facilities, we have a really, it's been the tap dance between the school day and the social workers that are working with them in group.
Yeah, I would totally echo what Michael's saying. I think if there's some way to get them the evaluative tools connected to the clinical sides of the house, along with the educational sides of the house, because it is sort of like a three-headed beast, if you will, regardless of what the program looks like. I mean, sometimes it's basically a converted house and the doors are unlocked, you know, and other times it's hardware secure and it's like walking into a fortress. But nevertheless, there's always clinicians, teachers, and then program direct care staff that are all, you know, super key to making sure that what you're doing is either A, not gonna rock somebody's world in a negative way, or, you know, B, skate right over, you know, developmental issues or learning disabilities or whatever, what have you. So we're always trying to get information coming from clinicians when we can, because we don't see them that much in the actual classroom. The teachers are there generally. There's always usually more than one. Often there will be an ELA teacher and then a special ed teacher or a reading specialist or something like that. So they can really help you out with the learning side of things. But the clinicians, you have to kind of a little more proactively get feedback for what they're seeing coming out of it. And sometimes they provide you with stuff that you're like, whoa, I had no idea that was going on. And so if there's it's hard for us because, say, we're going into a classroom over there for a couple hours a week, or at most maybe 4 hours a week. They're there the other 23 hours of those days, and they're for the rest of the week too. So they're being able to measure how well something is going would be key, I think, because they see so much more and in more depth.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, just confirmation wise. And for me, it's anecdotal. A lot of the stuff we get, like they'll come up and they'll say, hey, that game was so great. We use that, but they're there, like you say, 23 hours a day. And we're just, which is interesting that our impact for just that 2 hours. And I'm so glad to hear, Michael, right? I mean, are we talking 2 hours a week? I mean, is there anybody going in, or are we going, how frequently is everybody going in a week?
I can insert there right now. We're going in 4 days a week, but there's 5 days of programming right now. So it's a lot, but there's 23 hours in each day, right? And I think in my experience, and Grant, your experience might be wrong right now, but I think what is most helpful for us are articulation of individual case studies that we can bring to our respective facilities and say, here's a model that's working, and here's how communication is working through the therapeutic modalities and the actual curricular modalities, because we're semi-curricular. So it's not as if they're being given a grade, but they certainly can be penalized for non-participation. So it feels to me like forced engagement, and I'm trying to navigate. There's all sorts of trauma being opened up in other rooms in the facility, and then they're coming and sitting in a classroom with me, and I don't feel that it is necessarily safe for their engagement in that frame of mind, that they might be coming out of a therapy session right into mine, and I'm like, let's do some Shakespeare. So that to me would be the metric that's most valuable, but also the field wide, and now starting a longitudinal study, as you just said, is so essentially important, right? It's I'll go back to the Jeff Watkins annual fund pitch, where it's like the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. So I'm all about that effort too, but individual engagement between us, talking about what's working, what's not, and how units communicate back and forth would be such a huge help to me right now.
I think one of the things that I'm sure we're all encountering is not everybody's on the same page in the facility, right? They don't even talk to each other in the facility. There are different troops. There are this, there's that. There's so much division. We would all hope that all of them would be on the same page, and then when we come in, would want to get on our page, but they don't want to get on our page. They have no desire to get on our page. The key for us at IYC in Chicago is our deputy superintendent, who takes charge of all the programming, and he's the one that paves the way for us. And even he, being at a superior position and rank and all of that, has trouble with those that don't want us there. So one of the big things is, how can we help to facilitate the facility itself and making the facility more open and more generous and more communicative. That's what I think we do. In the 2 years that we've been there, we've found officers that have come forward that will take to be in the room with the boys when we're working with them, and they're really supportive of the work that weren't supportive the year before. So it's all about conversion. It's about converting the facility to be on the same, to want to get on the same page with us. And the only way to do that really is showing results, right? My measure for juveniles for this age is success is they show up. They show up. It's voluntary, right? That's so powerful in a facility when they see those boys that are problems somewhere else be cooperative and want to come to us, and that begins the dialogue. But it really puts a bigger burden on us as facilitators being in there, because we have to do that work too. It's not just the young people. We have to do something in that facility to make it more welcoming for other programming like ours or different than ours, that to be able to find their way in.
The big thing is that we had a facility, it was called Audubon Facility, and it was a residential facility. And we had a woman in there who was and I think this is the biggest thing that you can do, have somebody who knows how the entire system works, who is an advocate for you, because that person will talk to the other people. That person will say, no, James needs to be in this room because this is what it will do for them. That's huge. Second thing is, like we've been saying, it takes a minute. I remember going into Audubon, and there would be like 3 or 4 guards, if not the word I'm looking for, adults, I guess, in the room, just waiting for some kid to talk out of turn, to disrupt. And they would just be like on him, like, all right, you're out of here. Like, and so we were like, hey, why don't we see what happens? You know, I mean, if it gets out of hand, I'll be like, okay, I can't handle this. And I'll, you know, because part of it is they want to make sure we're not coming in and making it harder for them when we leave. That we're coming in, it's like, we're going to do this fun thing now, go back to yourself. It's like, oh, we don't want it, we hate you, we love them, you know. And it's also about, this is my job. My job is to make sure these students behave, really. And if they can see that, all right, it's like, why don't you loosen just a little bit? If it gets crazy, then I'll be like, you were right, this guy can't stay. The other thing is, if they say he has to go, don't get in the way of that. Don't take that moment to be like, no, he has to stay, because then you're the enemy. He has to go. And then we can talk about the next time we come in, well, how is Stephen doing today? It's like, well, let's try something today with Stephen. I think he's actually getting it. Let's give him a little bit more leeway today. Let's see what happens. But it's incremental. It's absolutely incremental. The third thing is, and I think we were talking about, how do we fit into what they want us to do? We literally go to a language arts teacher, an English teacher, history teacher, because this is historic, whatever we can do to fit in that curriculum. Like, well, what do you want them to learn? Well, we want them to learn how to read. Well, then we'll just spend time with one monologue for a really long time and talk about, you know, whatever the standard is, comprehension or retention, whatever it is. And because, I mean, I've been doing the Shakespeare stuff for many decades, and Shakespeare can do anything you want it to do. It can do whatever you want it to do. I want you to be more literate. Well, let's do some Shakespeare. I want you to be able to access your emotions, but not directly, because that's real hard. Well, let's talk about what Hamlet's going through. Let's talk about what Ophelia's going through. Let's talk about how Othello feels, or how Iago feels, you know? And then they're able to say, oh, that guy or that woman feels like this. I also feel like this. And then the door is open. So then you have that therapeutic element that you can say, no, this is great for the, you know, for the therapeutic element of it. So just finding the person who will help you and convincing that person and making sure it fits into what they want. Don't come in like you know more than everybody else. And figure out what they already have going that this can slide into, rather than, because what it is for a lot of facilities, we're an extra thing they have to deal with today. Like, oh, Shakespeare is common. Great. Right? Great. Now we have to da 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 da. Instead, it can be, oh, Shakespeare is coming. Good, because now they're going to learn a lot more English. The wonderful thing we got to do with Audubon, and that's happening now in Clark County, Indiana, is that we are part of the curriculum rather than an extra thing. So like today for English, it's Shakespeare, you know, and we get the literacy and we get all of the things they're trying to get for a lot of them, because we have a lot of really transient. I mean, it's barely, like, some of them might be there for years. Some of them are there for a couple of weeks before they either go home or go to a different facility. So it's very itinerant there. So they can use this as school time, like literally, what did we do in school today? So I can tell their teacher, so when they go back out, we can say, well, he's covered this, or she's covered this, or they've covered this. So just figuring who the person is and what they want from us helps so much. Rather than just coming and say, we got this great new thing, Shakespeare's great. They don't know Shakespeare's great, right? Like people's, association with Shakespeare is like, yeah, that's some really hard words, right? No, we don't want to do it. So if you can, just like we have to do with our middle schoolers, and say, no, honestly, these are people just like you. We have to do that with everybody in the facility. And it takes a minute. So just keep, as long as they're, like Kurt said, as long as the kids show up, I mean, if the kids are looking forward to you coming, you're doing something right. And if the facility is letting you stay and keep coming back, you're doing something right. It may not feel like that, but you'll look back a year from now and you go, oh my God, look what we did, So my big advice is just keep going every day. And
I just wanted, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just with that old organization we worked at, one of the best things was they gave us full access to behavior records, grades, and to be able to see decrease in violence on each other, decrease in write-ups. Those were our good old days, Keith and Kurt, when we had that access. And then we went to day treatment that we couldn't get any of that. But we're back in a position with, again, that key contact who's our advocate, that I feel like, to what Scott was saying, if we could be better prepared on what exactly we're going to ask for with administration, and if we can have that in a concise, because what our biggest challenge in collecting data now is because we're in a place that's very transient. And the old days of the pre and post survey, where we could really measure with this core group for 6 months, it was delightful, but we're not in that situation anymore. And to have to take X amount of minutes of an hour session to do a pre and post survey when we're only going to see them for 60 minutes, but we've got lots of anecdotal, but how can we get in there? We know it's possible, but that's just a big challenge. And I just wanted to add, when they added, Keith, you remember when we began at Audubon years ago, and they slotted us in the basketball time in the afternoon?
Yeah. That make sure they don't don't take something away.
I had a flashback
that they love to put us in, because I have been. This is super quick. I did a Shakespeare camp with a group of people, and I heard one of the facilitators say, "If you don't behave," like to some other kids,
Yes.
"If you don't behave, we're going to put you in Shakespeare." I went, "Yeah, this is not for us." So then I literally had to go through and go, "Okay, we're supposed to have 30 kids. Who wants to do this? Then you all will do it." And so it ended up being 12 kids who were really enjoying it. But yeah, make sure that they're not doing that to you. Yeah. It's like, well,
and
we
then
can put you. Yeah.
They put us in the social work, the social work time. And then that idea that they were going to be sharing and what that was totally changed the culture. And then we were allowed to actually change the staff, train the.
We're coming down to the end of the hour, so I know some of you may have to leave. We can continue this past the hour, but if someone that has to leave at the top of the hour, if you want to jump in, please jump in now.
I want to share, because I may have to leave in about 15 minutes. Amen to everything that was said. Definitely. I'm technologically challenged, but I think I sent that text to the group chat. The greatest obstacle I've experienced is definitely staff. One thing I think would be a good tool to have is just paying attention to your roster, the absentee list. We found that some of our most stellar students were being taken off the list deliberately as a punishment. And the kids are very, they're vocal about that. Look for that. That could happen. Also with the being forced to come to a class is counterproductive for us, of course. It makes my work harder, because now I have to convince them that it's okay, that there is something here for you. The joke will be on them in the end. One thing helps me, I try and find out, when you come in this classroom, what opportunity cost did you give up? That's how we find out, are they utilizing your phone time to call your family or these things? With my Shakespearean class, naturally it's going to be more difficult. I always take a minute to watch the interacting in the beginning. It gives me a gauge on what has happened today with staff and with these young people. And then when they come into the class, I watch how they move. Another thing that is problematic, and it happens way too much, group punishment. Group punishment. Our class was waiting. We were there. They stood on the line. One gentleman, young man, walked across to come in. Was like, "Hey, wait a minute. Did I say get off the line?" He said, "Well, I was the only one left." Everybody else out of the classroom, come back because he left the line. Come on. And this is a carryover to, it's prison being. This is something I know happens regularly in adult prison. So this whole thing of they can be conveniently adults when they need them to be, and then they're kids when you can help them, it's too much. So if we could just list those things, leave time for those kids to express what they're talking about, what they're feeling. They feel better because they are not heard a lot. And sometimes to hear somebody who really understands and who's not going to think that it's just a lie, because sometimes they'll be like, the kids blow things up bigger, but you can feel, and they know when you're there with them trying to really get to the heart of who they are. And that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to give them something that will change their life. That's the opportunity, because they're wounded, they're hurting, and they have trusted you. They're vulnerable. They open up. What do you give them then? Shakespeare may not be the thing in that moment. Know the time. This may be your time to fix something big in their kid's life. So, I mean, it's just always a heightened state of awareness. You have to be sensing everything, everything. Nothing is insignificant in the room with those kids. And the overturn, we need to find out who's coming back. Who's the returner? Who's the returner? Because when I see a kid that's back 4 times, that's on me. I feel like, what did I miss? Did I not give enough one-on-one engagement, check-in the beginning? Did I need to make some solo time for this particular kid? This isn't a blanket. And I found it isn't plastic. We all know it's not plastic glove work. We got to take off the rubber gloves, and getting staff to come on board is, I think, going in, we should find out who has facilitated classes before or voluntarily. What officers volunteers to do this? And who's being drug along? I think knowing those things could help. Sorry, I'm long-winded. Thank you.
We're at top of hour. Anybody else before you depart? We'll stay here as long as we have human beings in the boxes.
Damien, can I just follow up to kind of what you said? I mean, you really talked about more that physicality of reading the room and being in the space. And I know your work has kind of gone to the virtual realm. And so now, do you feel like you're losing that connection to really understanding them and kind of their feeling coming into the room? Oops, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. It's absolutely filtered, but not at all disabled. When you already know, you already know the frequency, you know the vibration. So when you see the space, you can hear how they're being engaged. You can see how they walk into the room. East Oakland youngsters, their body language is they have loud spirits. Their body language is gonna tell you off the top. If you know that, you're looking for that. And so when you see that, now the information is there, the burden of responsibility is there. How do I address this, or do I ignore it, is really what it comes down to.
And Christy, I would add that we have problems when we have more than about 7 students in the group, which happens sometimes, but when the group is small, we connect with them really well.
So in our our NEA residency right now is, I think I mentioned, in 2 programs that are in the same building. They're both girls programs. One is revocation and detention, and the other one is assessment and treatment. The catch is that for us, they, for social distancing reasons, are in 3 classrooms. So we have 1 teaching artist, 2 teaching artists, 1 classroom, 2 classroom, 3 classroom, and then a couple other teachers, usually from the program, in further tiles. And then they add a couple more tiles because they have to run audio separately through the thing. So you might see 2 of 3 girls in 1 classroom on camera, far away, masked, and it all but everything you're saying, Damien's absolutely right about, like, you know, having to pay attention and be laser focused all the time to all the small signals. I'm finding it just incredible. This is the one area of my life, professional or otherwise, where I feel this pandemic shit the most keenly, because it's well nigh impossible even to read, you know, bigger body language when the kid's not even in the frame, and the staff and teachers are out of the frame too. So, and then half the time the camera's going up and you have that thing where it's like mostly ceiling and a couple of heads like this far back in the room. So, and then when they speak, the audio can be so bad that it's hard to tell which room it's coming from, much less which youth it's coming from. And again, they may not even be on camera. So it really is kind of another world. I'm finding that I've been doing this for, I don't know, 10 or 11, 12 years or so. And all the things that I have been accustomed to relying on just poof, went magically away. So, you know, I mean, we've really had to adjust and try to just be hyper vigilant about constantly saying, who's speaking, where are you, who's in which room, what teachers are in what room, and which staff are in what room, and all this stuff people are saying about direct care staff it's also important. And one good staff member can change the entire progress of a whole residency. I've seen that happen. And conversely, a staff that really doesn't care, doesn't want to support what's going on, can really submarine it. So it's building those relationships when those people aren't on camera even is doubly challenging, you know, so that a staff member that I know is like carries a huge ton of weight in the room, and I've known her for about 10 years. I didn't even know she was there until like the 3rd week, because she wasn't speaking aloud, because she usually doesn't have to. And so I really struggle with that. I mean, just in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that I'm being as effective as I can be, but there are days when I feel really discouraged just by the conditions, not by the youth. The youth are always, you know, the youth, and they carry their wonders and challenges, you know, no matter where you are. But
and I kind of asked this too, based on a lot of studies that are coming out just of the visual fatigue that is happening in this virtual world, right? I mean, that are you as facilitators, you're not just doing this work, but you're doing other work in this realm. And are you getting visually fatigued, or are the students potentially getting physically fatigued as well, because they're doing this across a lot of their education? And then there's a lot of studies that are just coming out around that, and just how we are, as a visual artist myself, this is overwhelming, because I'm like examining the visuals that are happening behind, and everybody's seeing, and like what's happening, and how is that impacting us as well as in the learning.
I would like
also, Michael, conversely, about the success based on the students showing up. That's how I know I'm successful, as they come. The fact that you show up, you can't imagine the immense impact that has, that you show up. That I know when I pop up on the screen or I walk through that door, right? I'm making a huge statement to the staff that's there, you know, they know how tough it is and stuff. So you can't really not measure that piece, is that you're there. And you've just articulated why Shakespeare in Prison Network was founded. It was founded because we work so much alone, and we in facilities that are far distant from each other. So the Shakespeare in Prison Network was founded for us to get together and rebuild and refill each other's batteries. So thank you.
I have just a couple of things quickly. You know, my poor colleague Michael has had to deliver courses virtually where he couldn't see the students. We weren't allowed to see them at all because our children have not been, many of them, they've not been convicted. And that has changed, that changes their, you know, if they're afraid, should we take a Zoom picture or of something, or, you know, their identities get out. So it's all oral sometimes. I know how frustrating this has been for us all and heartbreaking, because we love these populations in a way that sometimes defies any way to accurately express how passionate we feel about this work and these children. But I keep thinking about how we're going to come out of this. And I have questions about the location of where we conduct our courses. I might want to pose a thought about that survey that we were talking about, or that Mike, no, I forgot who said it. We can't do those check-in surveys. Well, you know, we do those with our veterans. We have a veterans program. It works really well. I know they're adults, but 3 questions at the beginning, at the end, and we get surprising answers from them. And it could be worth, when we get to see our children again, just to offer that as a way to check in personally with and privately, because there might be some things that we learn that they aren't comfortable saying in group. And you might get a quick, easy feedback immediately, and you have proof of something if we need proof of what our work is doing. That could be of essence, especially for our itinerant, our children are coming and going as well because of that non-conviction thing. But you'll know where those children are in that day. And you might not see them again, but you've had an effect that day. So that might be of use. And the location thing I wanted to quickly ask you about. When I first started working at Jail East, which is our facility for the boys who are being held, they've been charged but not convicted yet for really, really serious crimes. And they can be in there for years before they come to trial, or they age out and go to another facility. When I first started, I held the classes in the prison pod. You know, I was just in there with all of them around, and some would join, some wouldn't. And then as we have progressed, we've been moved out of that visual sense of being in the middle of the prison pod into a classroom. And I have to say, as challenging as the pod was, I miss being seen. I miss being in the middle of it. So that even if they only let out 10 or 12 children to work, the others could see and hear, and that had effect. And then they might join later. But now we're not, no one knows, they don't know what we're doing outside. It's too private. And there was something about the public nature of it that I thought fed the activity. And I wonder if any of you have had experience with that and what your thoughts are. So that's it. I'm muting now.
Absolutely, Stephanie. Absolutely. We have a main pod, and the classrooms are contiguous. They're right up on it, and so the doors would open, and there'd be, you know, faces looking out to see us. And the staff, you know, began to realize that, you know, when Shakespeare and drama were there, it was going to be loud. They understood that in the G pod, but we would get staff, the coach counselors that are that rotate in and out of each class, would occasionally say, "Hey, today, you know, can you be in the classroom, and can it be less today when you've got a rehearsal planned, or you've got, you know, big loud activities planned?" We've learned to be very flexible with that, of course. But I wanted to just echo, applaud, and affirm the sense of the other students who don't happen to be in the program that day. What's going on out there, you know, and the sense of, hey, those guys are having fun. We have seen that. It is that double-edged sword though, because it's also the primary pedestrian conduit from, you know, the registration administration desk, you know, to those classrooms. So there's always traffic through that pod, and it can be a little nuts out there. But I definitely get that.
I think it was a point. I should have written it down. At my age, I start forgetting. I wanted to say to Steph Shine, the fact that they move you to another space, the people have seen it. I don't know if it's if the population is stagnant. Does it switch out a lot like ours?
When we're in Jellies, that population isn't stagnant, but it doesn't switch out with the frequency of the Hope Academy, where we are right now, or in our other facility, 201 Poplar, which we have not been able to access at all during this.
Memphis?
Yeah, Memphis, that's where we are. You know, I don't know, it's been a really long time since we've been in the pod. Sometimes they let us perform in the pod, but I would say it might have been 2 years since we've been in the midst of the pod, and I miss our pod. Our pod is not a thoroughfare. It is our pod. C-pod is this little forgotten area in the women's facility. We just have so many juveniles who are being held without conviction that the serious crimes have been moved to the women's facility. It's absolutely bizarre.
Oh, and I wanted to add something to Michael. I wanted to share. Oh my God.
I think the whole total of my very long-winded thing was that
I remember.
The relationships are very difficult to actually have over the medium when you're not even looking at the people.
Yes, I was thinking about the sound. We have that issue is something that we're dealing with right now, and the classes, the different rooms. We had 2 different classes. This is what we did because it just wasn't working for us because they could not hear. Because of social distancing, they needed a larger space. So their solution was to move the monitor farther back to get a larger span, but we lost volume. They couldn't hear us. So,
or you get the whoop, 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 whoop.
Right. So we broke it up, you know, and now that's meaning we're going to do half for the first half, and then the next group come in, we'll do that half. That for us helped in the situation because other guys could get in sooner to go and get their phone calls, you know, so that made it work. And so it was just rotated. So they're easier to live with that. But we stayed on them too about the audio and letting them know what that problem was and utilizing the kids. And if you can only see ahead, you kept saying, we can only see ahead. We can only see ahead. They're going to do as least as they can do if they are not on board. So you just have to kindly let them know that we're not going away. Kindly, you know, this needs to be done. But yeah, those are hopefully those things will do something to help if you can press that. I'll let you know how it's turned out. It's a work in progress.
I just like to add, like Steph said, when I'm in the classroom with the young gentlemen, this is what I see for an hour. And so it's all auditory, and I'm a very physical person, and I'm very attuned to people's body language. So it's been frustrating, but the great thing is it allows me to really slow down. And when I have an instruction, all right, so what did I say? So now you understand me. Now I know that it's clear that they're understanding what I'm saying because they've repeated it back to me. It gives me an opportunity to really let them speak. And it helps when I have someone like our juvenile manager, Joyce Anderson, or an officer who's really engaged and really like in there with them where I would be. So it's been a great, you know, it's even though there's been a barrier, it's taught me a lot. And I get to even though I can't see them, I learned so much about them in that short time. And my goal is always at the end, no matter, even if we don't understand the Shakespeare, it doesn't matter. The Shakespeare is there as a tool, and I love it, and I want them to engage with it. But if they elevate by the end, whether it's, if they're in a different state, their state of mind, or, they're engaging in questions, that's all I can ask for right now. And that's, it's about changing their perspective. And if I can get a guard on board, I can get multiple people as a group, work as a community. That's what I want to do. It's not always about being with the Shakespeare. It's about being in the moment. Like, I think, Damien, you said something similar to that, being present.
Yes. And Kurt, I'd like to say this real brief before we go. This is hard. Sometimes you can't see your students. Sometimes you can't hear them. I look at it like this. This is a pandemic, and we're doing real deep, meaningful work. And the pandemic has kept a lot of people out of things. The fact that we are getting peeps through the window, getting cracks in the door, is the tenacity of giving a damn. And it's not going to come out like we wanted, or hell, it's a different time. We're going to get attenuation. Things going to drop off. But we're going to still keep our finger on the pulse until we can hold the body. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we do. And that's why we're here trying to figure out, how can we do what we do the best way? And I appreciate every one of you for being willing to do that in spite of, because you know the value of the work. And I'm honored to work with all of you. And I'm grateful on behalf of the kids that they have us.
Thank you. Christy, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I would just say thank you. Thank you to all of you. And this is the beginning, and you all feel, feed my soul in wanting to continue to do this work. And I hope I can be a great representative, continue to be a good representative for you as we continue to do this work together. And I see this as a partnership and us moving more of this work happening. And you are all great models for that. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'll chat about the 19th for those of you that can show up. This will be a continuation, and with the recognition that we're going to be sharing with other colleagues that were not a part of this meeting, but since Scott recorded it, they can check into it if they will. So I think that mostly the community will be those that are interested in juvenile incarceration, and we want to leave some time for them to ask questions of us. So again, it's not insular, it's always about building the community, reaching out. So love you all. Thank you for your work. Just keep showing up. That's the bottom line. You just keep showing up like a bad penny, my dad would say.